Continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Partly sunny, nice day ahead, high near 80. Currently 63 degrees at O'Hare. Your next news update is at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. 18 months ago, the then Surgeon General of the United States, you've heard him on our show, seen him on the Sunday Talk, especially now that he's not part of the administration anymore.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
Dr. Jerome Adams, he tweeted this out February 29th of 2020. Seriously, people, stop buying masks. They are not, all caps, effective in preventing general public from catching coronavirus. He tweeted 2 days later, folks who don't know how to wear them properly tend to touch their faces a lot and actually can increase the spread of the coronavirus. That was February 29th of 2020. About a year and a half later, a little less, Rand Paul is suspended from YouTube for saying most of the masks you get over the counter don't work. So we just learned a lot about masks?
Well, I thought they were saying that back then because they didn't want to take the PPE away from our healthcare providers.
That's the cover story. I'm sorry. That's not what Jerome Adams tweeted.
No.
They are not effective in preventing general public from catching coronavirus, is what he tweeted.
Because they're not. The people that I know, the double maskers, they're the ones who got COVID. Isn't that strange? But by the way, Dan, we're back to wearing masks at church now.
Francis Collins, the director of the National Institute for Health, was on with Wallace on Fox News Sunday. And he was in customary hysteric mode.
Well, Chris, we can't really predict that. All we can say is that this is going very steeply upward with no signs of having peaked out. So I will be surprised if we don't cross 200,000 cases a day in the next couple of weeks. And that's heartbreaking, considering we never thought we would be back in that space again. That was January, February. That shouldn't be August. But here we are with Delta variant, which is so contagious, and this heartbreaking situation where 90 million people are still unvaccinated who are sitting ducks for this virus. And that's the mess we're in. We're in a world of hurt, and it's a critical juncture to try to do everything we can to turn that around.
Dan, you're a sitting duck, huh?
First of all, there's so much wrong with that. Starting with, again, the metric that changed. Cases.
This was never about cases. This is about hospitalizations and death rate. And we're doing very well in Chicago. In fact, we're down 52% from where we were last year at this time. Mm-hmm. Of all the, 203 people who got COVID who went to Lollapalooza, not one hospitalization or death. Most some are asymptomatic.
And then the 90 million estimate on the unvaccinated, of course, does not include, because they don't include, people who've only gotten one of two jabs. That's number one. But the more important number than that, they don't include people who've gotten sick and recovered, people who have natural immunity.
Which is better than a vaccine.
And is also estimated to be in the tens of millions. Mm-hmm. Various estimates, depending on who you want to believe. But the kids, what about the kids? Because, school is starting.
That's very worrisome. I think traditionally people kind of considered, kids aren't going to get that sick with this. More than 400 children have died of COVID-19. And right now we have almost 2,000 kids in the hospital, many of them in ICUs, some of them under the age of 4. So anybody who tries to tell you, don't worry about the kids, the virus won't really bother them, that's not the evidence. And especially with Delta being so contagious.
A lot of them have RSV that are in the ICUs.
Even to take his numbers as given, without breaking them down further. You have 2,000 kids in the hospital, some in ICU. What some?
Some.
Oh, what's the number? But and this is not to be dismissive of anybody who gets sick, kids who get sick, anybody who dies, including children. Of course, unfortunate. Wish it didn't happen. But you're talking about 2,000 kids. When he says kids, I assume he means under 18 in the hospital. This is a country with 74 million people under the age of 18. I mean, this is something else that's been lost almost from the beginning. There's no proportionality. There's no proportionality in the discussion, so there's no proportionality in the response, it seems to me. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Don Boudreaux. He's an economist, author, professor, co-director of the program on the American economy and globalization at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University as well. Don, thanks for joining us again. Oh, and also contributor to Cafe Hayek. I always want to pump Cafe Hayek because that's a great blog. Don, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
So you and one of the other bad boys of medicine, well, you're a bad boy of economics, I guess. He's a bad boy of medicine. Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford penned this piece for the Wall Street Journal about the eradication of COVID. And when you have the leading public health officials on TV constantly talking about cases and cases and cases, they're almost by definition implicitly saying we have to eradicate no cases. No cases is the goal now, not, as Amy was saying, reduction in hospitalizations and death, managing and learning to live with it, like the flu, so on and so forth.
It's insane. What you guys said just before bringing me on, I agree with wholeheartedly. The metric has changed. The goalposts keep changing. These people are addicted to their power. And how do you hang on to power? Well, you find some excuse to panic the public. The numbers, what you said about his 400 number is exactly right. That number is totally out of proportion. What is it compared to? I happened to see that in 2019, so the year before COVID, the CDC reports that 6.7% of all Americans under the age of 18, so children, had at least two visits in that 1 year to hospital emergency rooms. So that's roughly 4.1 million children visiting hospital emergency rooms twice. So compare that 400 number to that. And Amy's correct. A lot of these hospitalizations today, although they are of respiratory disease, they're not of COVID. But we don't get this from people like Collins. We don't get this from people like Fauci. We're just thrown into a panic. And when people hear these numbers, they say, oh, yeah, well, 400 children, wow. Well, when you compare that to the number of children who suffer from playground accidents, from the number of children who suffer automobile accidents, the number of children who suffer child abuse, that number starts to shrink into relative insignificance.
Well, when is this going to end? Is it ever going to end? Do we just have to learn to live with this craziness?
I am so depressed, Amy, by what's going on. Like you, I'm sure the moment I think I see light at the end of the tunnel, that light disappears, and it's darkened with the image of Fauci or Collins or someone of that stature. No, they seem to want to keep us in perpetual fear, even though in the United States we don't have a formal policy of zero COVID as they seem to have in these dystopias now down under Australia and New Zealand. We do nevertheless seem to be moving in that direction with the focus on cases, not even hospitalizations, and certainly not fatalities. So it does seem to be moving in a kind of zero COVID direction, which is the policy that Jay and I criticized in the Wall Street Journal piece of a few weeks ago that Dan just mentioned. We cannot eliminate risk from life. Life comes along with risk, and that is true of new risks, including the novel coronavirus. We're not going to eliminate it. Attempts to eliminate it will not only destroy civilization if we pursue them far enough. Attempts to eliminate it will also endanger our physical health, put our physical health in greater danger from other sources of disease and injury. The world is now treating the purpose of humanity. It's treating humanity as having one goal: avoid COVID. Anything else is acceptable. Any other danger is fine, just as long as we avoid COVID. That is deranged.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know him, but a colleague of yours, a professor at George Mason University, is suing the university over the vaccine mandate.
Todd Zwicky.
Yeah.
Todd Zwicky. He's a long. I've been friends with Todd for almost 40 years. We're close friends and co-authors. George Mason has mandated vaccinations for all of its faculty, staff, and students.
Mm-hmm.
I am fully vaccinated. I was very distressed to learn less than a week ago that for the fall semester, George Mason is requiring that even fully vaccinated people wear masks. So
that's what we have here in our schools.
It's insane. And so Todd and I have been actually communicating about this, and what George Mason's officials are doing, which is consistent with what other mindless officials are doing worldwide. They're basically admitting that the vaccines don't work very well. I mean, if you think the vaccines work, why require masking? They're requiring masking. That means they must not think the vaccines work. If they don't think the vaccines work very well, their case for requiring Todd to be vaccinated is even weaker than it was before. Todd had COVID. That is, no one disputes that. Todd now has some natural immunity from against COVID. No one disputes that. There are disputes about how effective it is, but there's also no dispute that the vaccines, regardless of how effective or safe you believe them to be, vaccines, like all medical treatments, do carry some degree of risk. And so the university is putting, which is a government institution, by the way, George Mason is a state of Virginia institution, is compelling my colleague to be vaccinated, I think putting him at greater risk than he would be at were they to allow him to continue to teach using his natural immunity against the disease.
You know what's interesting about this court case and others like it is where the courts seem to be, which is I don't hold out much hope that your colleague is going to be victorious in this suit any more than those who sued Indiana University over the vaccine mandate there. Courts don't seem to want to take this up, and to the extent they take it up, they, of course, defer to the public health professionals. It's interesting to see this play out over the last year and a half because there were some judges in this country who were willing to say, you know, treating churches disparately from superstores, that's a First Amendment problem, and we're willing to side with willing to render decisions on the side of religious liberty and the Constitution of the United States. But if you put public health on it, then the courts are just folding into the states to be to give their stamp of approval on anything any politician, any governmental entity does under the rubric of public health. And this seems to me the way that leftists have figured out how to aggrandize their power permanently. Just put it under safety, public health, and you can do anything, and the courts will abide it.
I think that's exactly correct. As I think I may have told you before, I think the progressive left for decades now have been trying to frighten people to accept tyranny by using fears of climate change. Well, that's just too distant, and the public's just not really falling for that, right? A handful of people on the left fall for it and get panicked, but most people don't. COVID, however, is a silver bullet for these types of people. The public has allowed itself to be frightened into an excessive fear of this disease. Look, it's a real disease. It has real dangers for some people. It is more dangerous than the typical flu. Of course, no sensible person denies that. But the degree to which people have become frightened by this disease is completely out of proportion, magnitudes larger than the actual underlying dangers of the disease. And this fear of COVID, this widespread fear of COVID, this unquestioned fear of COVID by most people, fortunately not you guys, but by most people, it is allowing people with power to run roughshod over the lives and liberties of ordinary men and women. And so it's turned out to be a great blessing for those people who like to exercise power, who like to behave arbitrarily with respect to the masses, and they're doing it. And I do not see an end to it anytime soon. I am sorry to say.
He is Don Boudreaux, an economist, author, professor, co-director of the program in the American Economy and Globalization at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. As well, you can get his writings at Cafe Hayek, too. Don, thanks as always. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Environmental kooks cost Louisiana a $120 million steel plant. Landlords dealt a setback in court. More wasteful billions are in the mail today. Those stories next. As you know, my friend Michael Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He created the best pillow, and Mike created the Giza Dream bed sheets. Mike found the world's best cotton, called Giza. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. Mike's Giza sheets come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Mike's